6 of At Your Service with Haber and Martinez. I'm Haber, and as you may be able to guess, Martinez is not here. However, I'm joined by our special guest today, Dr. Isabel Perez-Morina. Dr. Perez-Morina is the Chief Executive Officer of the Advocate Program, Inc. We'll talk plenty about the Advocate Program because that's what our show is about today. In fact, it's entitled The Advocate Program and Its Diverse Impact on Our Community. Dr. Perez-Morina has been kind enough to come on board and give us an hour of her time. She runs a very, very busy program that has an awful lot of tentacles that extend into the community. Many of you know the Advocate Program through the criminal court system. They contract with the Miami-Dade County Criminal Division, Domestic Violence Division, Family and Juvenile Divisions, and provide services both pre and post adjudicatory, as well as diversionary programs. They also do work with the state of Florida insofar as the Department of Motor Safety and Highway Vehicles is concerned. They do SSS protocols, traffic schools, level 1 and level 2 DUI schools. And then they have all sorts of interesting community outreach programs that offer a variety of tools and support services for the general community. So that's, I guess, one of the things that I really want to highlight during today's show, and the doctor and I will be able to go through plenty of this. But if anything, I want you all to get out of this. Those of you who are in the criminal justice system, you either already know what you need to know, or you likely have a lawyer, be it a public defender or a private defense attorney, who's going to answer those questions and explain them to you. But there's so much more that the Advocate Program does that doesn't involve people who are court ordered. Sometimes, for example, and the doctor and I will talk about this because she actually helped me with this in one case not too long ago. Sometimes there are proactive services where defense attorneys will want to use some of the tools that are available to us through Advocate as a sort of preventative or proactive measure that we're using strategically and tactically in a case without the knowledge of the state attorney's office. And then other times, and more importantly, there are people who have nothing to do with the system whatsoever. Just people in the community, be them veterans, be them homeless folk, be them mentally, people suffering from mental illness or from substance abuse, or dual diagnosis people who suffer from both mental illness and substance abuse problems. Advocates there for all of you. Domestic violence victims, domestic violence defendants, children. There are just so many branches that we could clearly spend a lot more than an hour. But as I've already rambled on for a good 3 minutes, and the doctor has been quite patient sitting there listening to me go forward, let me first thank you very much for coming and joining us today, Doctor.
Thank you. No, I appreciate being here, and I'm very excited to be able to talk about all the work that we do at the Advocate Program.
Awesome. So one of the things that I didn't know prior to this morning was that your doctorate, your PhD, is in psychology. You are a trained clinical psychologist.
I am. I went to Nova Southeastern University.
We're fellow graduates from different disciplines of the same.
Yeah.
I call it Harvard of the South. That was my nickname. Why don't you tell the folks how it is that you got involved with the Advocate Program and what it is that your present responsibilities are, and then we can start going through some of your services.
Sure. So my story is a little unique. I started volunteering at the Advocate Program at the age of 12. I was lucky enough, my sister was the executive assistant to the then and first executive director of the Advocate Program, with Ruth Wedden. We've only had 3 CEOs since our inception in 1971. And Ruth and I hit it off, and she was an incredible mentor, and she would take me out to lunch, basically, and just opened the door and my eyes to a lot of social issues and what I can become as a young professional. Throughout my development, my professional career, I was fortunate. I came back and served in various roles under the leadership of Dr. David McGriff, who was my predecessor. And then in 2018, I succeeded and became the CEO of the Advocate Program.
So the Advocate Program has been around for more than 50 years.
It has. 53 years.
And you guys are a bona fide 501c3, correct?
We are a nonprofit organization.
So let's just start with the volunteering aspect. Let's assume that there are at least one or two good folks out there in our beloved audience who after listening to today's show decide that they want to lend a hand and volunteer. How does that work with Advocate?
So we have a lot of different opportunities depending on individuals' interest. I basically did clerical volunteer work. We've had individuals that are at the end of their career, they're retired and they want to give back and they want to do some hours. They've done everything from quality assurance. We had a great volunteer who worked as many hours as a full-time individual. And what she would do is she would go into everybody's cases and basically review them and make sure they were accurate, and did QA work for us and just for free. We actually named our Employee of the Year award after her because of her dedication to service. And so we have a whole host of volunteer opportunities, can involve clients or patients, and may not involve client or patients depending on the interest and skill of the individual that wants. We also work with Miami-Dade Public Schools, and we have interns come in every summer from Miami-Dade Public Schools, and they get assigned to all of our divisions for help.
So when you say that you have school, that you're talking about student volunteers?
We do have student volunteers and help them get their hours that they need in order to graduate.
Oh, so it's like community service that you're talking about, like the mandatory community service that kids have to do.
Yep.
And oh, I got popped out. Am I back in? Are we back?
You're back.
Here?
You're back.
Okay. I don't know what happened there, but now you're on this side of the screen. I guess maybe this is some sort of a weird Rorschach type thing they're trying to do with me here. So you partner with Dade County Public Schools. You have kids come in and they're able to do, I would assume that they probably do more clerical type stuff because they're kids, right?
They do. Yeah, and they help us. They have technical skills. Some of them help us do videos, and so they could help us develop outreach materials, all sorts of things that kids can do depending on their skill and interest as well.
Oh, I would guess that probably a lot of them have pretty good technical skills and are able to do stuff that the technological T-Rex that I am completely incapable. My son moved out. I'm a recent empty nester. By the way, today is National Sons Day. So if you have a son, happy National Sons Day. And if you don't, to the whole audience, happy National Sons Day. So my son moved out and I'm an empty nester now. So I'm like blowing him up, trying to get answers to questions every time I can't figure out how to turn on my TV or the remote control or, whatever. Anyhow, okay. So kid volunteers, but let me stick with the subject of community service for a minute while we're at it. And I know it's kind of jumping around a little bit, but one of the things one of the services that Advocate program provides is supervision for community service hours, whether they're court ordered as a condition of a sanction such as probation, or if they are voluntary in the sense that the individual has agreed to enter into a diversionary program, and therefore they're not court ordered, but they're still obligated to do them. And we'll talk about the difference of those two things in a moment. But tell us a little bit about community service. How do you approach that? What do you do? What do you offer? What are what involvement does Advocate have with that?
Sure. So we partner with all sorts of 501c3 organizations in our community. Many of them reach out to us. Some of them we reach out to. Community service can be done at any nonprofit or public entity. So we also work with government, parks, etc. And we have placements for individual. We basically work to maintain a list, make sure we have the right contact information, and then help individuals get placed depending on their history and the hours that they need. And then we work with that placement to supervise the hours and get the information back to court.
So I guess what you're saying is you have two kind of branches. One is you forge relationships and the other is you document.
That's right. So
in different counties have different approaches, and maybe I should have explained this before we got started, with getting into the meat and potatoes. In Miami-Dade County, when you have any type of a probationary sentence in felony court, in circuit court, the Department of Corrections supervises. But in misdemeanors in county court, we don't, and there are other counties, many other counties that do use Department of Corrections for misdemeanor probation, but Miami-Dade County doesn't. So advocate contracts, I guess is the right word. I don't know, please correct me.
We do. We have a contract. We have a contract with the county. And so, yeah,
Right.
In the state of Florida, felony is supervised by the Department of Corrections. Misdemeanor is actually supervised by the county, and every county does it differently. So some county, their sheriff's office supervises misdemeanor, their court supervises misdemeanor, and then in a few counties, they privatize misdemeanor probation and they contract it out. And that's typically done through the county and court.
And so that's what we have here. We have a privatized system for misdemeanor probation. So
we have for a very long time, and we've been the sole contracted provider since the early 90s.
And I can tell the audience, you know, having been in the system since 1991, it really is a fabulous relationship. Advocate program provides such a diverse plethora of services. They have so many tentacles in the community with regards to the system. And again, so much other stuff that has nothing to do with court that we will spend some time on. But the stuff that is court related, again, that could be either post-adjudicatory where you are sentenced to probation, or it could be diversion, or you have other reaches with the system in terms of the kind of middle ground where there is no diversion and there also is no resolution. So for example, if I get arrested for DUI today and I want to keep my driver's license, I'm going to have to register for driver improvement school, level 1 DUI school, assuming it's my first DUI. That's something that Advocate handles, correct? Yes.
Yes, so we do DUI school, and we run and we help facilitate diversion programs, the Back on Track, which is more of a deferred prosecution program, and we do misdemeanor probation, like I mentioned.
So when it comes to the court-appointed stuff, and I want to just skip back for a second to the community service hours. So, because I have a question. Normally, I try and push my clients because I have my own agenda. And normally what I tell them is, here in Dade County, and it doesn't always work in other counties, and some judges are persnippety here in Dade and may not like it. So I try and run it by the court before I even bring it up to the client. Or I get the client's approval and then bring it up to the court, one way or the other. But I like to tell people that, and I'm curious whether or not you have this connection, which is why I'm bringing it up. I try and tell people to do their community service hours, if they're amenable to doing them this way, through the Humane Society. Because the Humane Society will give you a certain number of hours for each day that you serve, each 24-hour period that you serve as a foster parent to either a cat or a dog or another animal in need. So in other words, you're freeing up bed space at the Humane Society. You're giving hopefully a loving, caring, warm home to a furry friend, and you're also forging a relationship that oftentimes results in an adoption anyhow. Do you guys have any correlation with that, or you just do other type of referrals?
We really haven't developed that relationship. To my knowledge, I don't know all the organizations that are part of our list. Definitely something that's of interest to me. I'm an animal lover as well, and so the idea that you help and you have win-wins on several sides is something that we would definitely support. So as long as, what I would tell you about community service hours, something that everyone should know, is we do not accept online community service hours. And so there's a lot of websites out there that will allow you to pay a fee or pay a donation, and then they'll give you community service hours. And oftentimes some of our clients think that they're legitimate because they say on the website that they are, but unfortunately we don't accept those. So we get a lot of perform an act of service.
Yeah, we get a lot of that on my end too, where, client will say, "Oh, no problem. My cousin Jimmy has a 501 and I can go get my hours from him." And I always say to the client, "Listen, you better run that by your PO before your supervisor, before you bank on it." All right, well, maybe there's some food for thought for you there to maybe reach out to the Humane Society and see if you can forge that relationship with them too. My experience is depending upon how busy they are, whether they've got, an overabundance of pets, overcrowded, or they're a little bit more open, they give different number of hours correlating to each 24-hour day of fostering. Sometimes it's 1 hour per day. Sometimes they give up to 4 or 6 hours per day. So, just food for thought and for the audience as well to think about.
Sure.
Let's go back and talk about the overall mantra of the Advocate Program. You have a mission statement, right?
We do. We have a mission statement, and it really is about leadership and supervision and best practices. But really, all of that can really be said by thinking about two words. We are about safety and we are about well-being. That's really our mantra. And we do that through our service. And so when it comes to safety, it's at every level, at the individual level, at the child and family level, at the community, and at the system level, right? And we understand that in order for homes to be safe, for relationships to be healthy, individuals have to have a pathway towards well-being. And so our focus is on making sure that all of our clients have a pathway to meeting their needs, to being sustainable, to being well physically and mentally, so that they can be productive members of our community. They could be good in their relationship, good parents, good stewards of our community, and all of our services are geared towards those principles.
Do you know? I mean, maybe not exact, but general idea. Of course, if you know specifically, that's fine too. But what percentage of AP's client base is court involved versus voluntary, non-court related?
So from the criminal, we have criminal justice mandated clients, and then we have families that might be referred by family court. Sometimes it's a court order, sometimes it's just a referral from family court. And then we have a lot of grant programs where it's all voluntary. And so I would say about 60% of our clients are going to be mandated from some system, but about 40% of our clients are there on a voluntary basis, getting some sort of service that they're there for.
Do you provide, and I know this just because you brought up family, do you do the domestic intervention programs as well?
We used to. We're no longer certified in battered intervention programming. We do have a network, and so the state of Florida, the statute just changed last year, and the Department of Children and Family now oversees domestic violence intervention programming, and they certify all the providers in our community. Because of our role and our connection, what we do is we do the assessments for the court and for the client, and then we'll refer out for the battered intervention programming. And so we have a list of 5 or 6 people that are on the state list.
That's very scary to me that DCF is in charge of that. But that's another story for another show. All right, so let's talk a little more about a bit about where you guys are. You have offices all over the county. You have multiple offices, a main office, satellite offices. How do people find you?
So
apart from your website.
Apart from our website. So we have 3 locations in Miami-Dade County. Our main client location, mostly for those that are in justice mandated programs, are going to be right next to the criminal justice system, right by I was going to say the Orange Bowl, but right by Marlin Stadium.
Now I just call it by Chick-fil-A.
So that's where we're at. We also have another office by Cutler Bay, right by the South Bay Justice Center. And then we have our administrative offices are closer to Doral. We operate a DUI school both in Miami-Dade County through all of those offices and in Marathon. So we're in Monroe County for DUI school. We have a Broward office, and that's really for our veteran services. We have a large federal grant to provide supportive services for veteran families. And we do that in Monroe, Dade, and Broward. And now we'll have 2 offices in Volusia County in a couple of months because we'll be doing misdemeanor probation services up in that county as well.
Can't get Broward to come around, can you?
Broward probation is BSO, so they haven't privatized.
Broward is special. like as in special needs special. For those of us, and this is obviously not on you, this is my take as a lawyer who's been dealing with them forever. It is an absolute it is an abject nightmare and a failure. It is just really a pathetic organization in terms of the way their misdemeanor probation is run. I got to say, if I were rating Broward versus Dade, it would be a -10 versus a 10. It's truly that. Even with simple things like community service hours, they have a list of places that you can go and only those places, which is absurd because, as you said, any legitimate, not again your cousin Jimmy's, charity, or, your cousin Susie is an ordained minister in, God knows what, but a legitimate, bona fide, religious, charitable, government, or academic organization, any of them should suffice for community service purposes as long as they're legit or bona fide. Yet Broward gives you a list and that's it. You're locked down. And not only must you go off their list, but you have to get approved by the people on their list who may or may not approve you. So they may not want you. They may have too many people. It's just an absolute abject disaster, which I have never experienced. Yeah. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, I've never experienced that here in Dade. I have not once in 32 plus years had an advocate representative, or for that matter, even a felony court situation where I've had a rejection of community service hours, except when I have a client who wants to game the system and try and, pull a fast one. But for folks who are legitimately going out there, whether they want to go, clean up the streets, clean up a park, clean up the beach, whether they want to go spend their time reading to kids at a school or at a magnet school or at a charter school, whether they want to, whatever it may be. I mean, any of so many things, even like I said, even the Humane Society. I find that I've never had these types of problems here in Dade, where in Broward, it just turns into a complete disaster. So kudos to you. I'm glad that you're expanding a little bit. So you've got 3 offices here in Dade, and then you're expanding up to Volusia for full-time government service up there, and a little bit in Broward and a little bit in Monroe. Yes. Hopefully that'll pick up, and you'll catch some more steam in those areas. So let's talk a little bit about the difference between pretrial diversion or deferred prosecution, which are basically synonyms. There are some technical differences between the two, but overall, they're pretty much the same thing for purposes of you're not adjudicated guilty of an offense. The case is pending, and while it's pending for diversion or deferred prosecution, you've made a deal with the government. And your deal is, if you do X, Y, and Z, and you don't do anything that you're not supposed to do, then over a period of time, we're going to agree to dismiss your charges. So I guess the main difference between a program like BOT, which you would call, and that's the Back on Track program, that's diversion here in Dade County for first-time, non-complicated DUI offenders. If you do Back on Track, the reason that is a deferred prosecution program as opposed to what we would traditionally call a diversion program is that as a condition precedent, in order to get into Back on Track, you have to admit guilt. You actually have to sign. Yeah, you actually have to sign a document that says, yes, I did it, I'm guilty. And
you have to sign a statement of responsibility, absolutely. And then if you complete everything, you don't get a dismissal, but you get a withhold on a reduced charge.
Correct. And the difference between that and a straight up diversion program is that there is no, here in Dade County, again, in Broward, you have to do a written admission of guilt just to get into diversion. So here in Dade County, we don't require that. We basically put you on your honor, and the consequence is if you blow it, you get bounced out of diversion, and then you have to go face your charges in front of a judge and a prosecutor who know that you bounced out of diversion. Right. And no doubt will use that against you one way or another. So both of those situations, whether it's diversion or deferred prosecution, are pre-adjudicatory. And then the flip side of that coin is, again, probation. And that's where you have either pled guilty or you have been found guilty and you have been court ordered to do X, Y, or Z. So you do both. You do the pretrial diversion, you do the deferred prosecution, pretrial diversion / deferred prosecution, and what we would call community corrections or community-based sanctions. You do these for a variety of offenses, right? It doesn't really matter what the offense is. Are there any disqualified offenses that you're aware of?
Well, at the felony level, there are going to be a couple of, there's only first-time felonies that are going to be allowable to come in.
Do you do felony diversion as well?
We do felony diversion. We do felony drug crimes as well for some of those that are eligible. We do felony cases involving domestic violence for first-time felony offenders. So those are some of the diversion programs we have at the circuit level. At the county court level, diversion for traffic, DUI, like you mentioned, through Back on Track. And then we'll do some general misdemeanor cases. And then we work alongside of domestic violence court. We partnered with domestic violence court since their inception in 1992, and we're the diversion provider there for misdemeanor domestic violence.
So that the folks know, all criminal cases here in Dade County go to the main criminal courthouse. That would include felonies and misdemeanors. Some misdemeanors get farmed out to branch court because they just happen to be in that particular area, whether it's South Dade or Hialeah or North Dade. It's a much smaller percentage post-COVID. Pre-COVID, there was certainly more of that. But domestic violence misdemeanor cases are all heard in the Lawson Courthouse. That is the family courthouse in downtown Miami. So if you have a straight up domestic misdemeanor, not felonies, because felonies are going to be in the Gerstein Criminal Court Complex. But if you have a misdemeanor DV case, you're going to be downtown. And there's a handful of county court judges that sit as acting circuit court judges for purposes of domestic violence restraining order cases, which are the civil injunctions. And those same judges have criminal dockets where they do nothing but hear domestic violence criminal cases. So Advocate partners with DV misdemeanors over at Lawson full-time, all-time.
All-time, yeah, yes. The state has contracted us there. All the diversion programs are under the state attorney's office, their authority. And they've worked with us since the 70s to develop diversion programs and all the conditions depending on the various courts and charges involved.
So with the domestic, I know that you said earlier that you no longer provide the actual service for the DIP program, which is the domestic intervention program. It's the batterers class.
Batters.
It's a 26-week, 1 hour a week course. And that is the staple of the state attorney's office diversion protocol for domestic violence cases. So you don't actually provide that service, you farm them out or contract them out to other providers?
Right, so it's statutory. Everything relating to batterers intervention is statutory in the state of Florida. And like I mentioned, there's a list of providers that the state certifies, and we give the client a list of those, and they choose from the list depending on location, etc. So they just, the individual chooses. When it comes to intimate partner violence, yes. I want to say something because I know that if you have attorneys listening, I think this is an important thing, because this is oftentimes where attorneys and an advocate might have a very different perspective. And what I would tell you is that advocate program, when it comes to intimate partner violence, we do not facilitate anger management. So we will not put individuals that are allegedly perpetrating intimate partner violence into an anger management type of intervention.
But I would assume you do anger management for regular types of non-domestic cases. So road rage, misdemeanor battery.
Family violence.
Domestic.
Yeah. Family violence is fine, just not intimate partner violence.
Got it. So the running with that anger management, you do anger management, you do anti-theft, you do morals and values classes. All of these are traditional things that we get very frequently with regards to diversion programs from the Dade County State Attorney's Office. So for example, if you have a shoplifting case and the person's going to get diversion, oftentimes they want them to take this 4-hour anti-theft class. Or if they have a solicitation charge, they may want them to take this 4-hour morals class.
Well, solicitation is different now. Solicitation now all go to a provider called More to Life.
Called what?
More to Life. And that provider has 2 tracks, if you will, for those that are charged with solicitation and those that are charged with prostitution. Depending on their scope, they'll get 2 different tracks. And that's a much more involved program now than it used to be. So there's no longer the 4-hour course for that.
Boy, those used to be so simple to resolve back in the day. I don't even want to get into how embarrassingly simple those things used to be.
Yeah, we had stories too.
How about so and with regards to the anger management classes, those are the same type of, these things are basically, I want to liken them in protocol, not content, but in protocol to regular traffic school, right?
They're a group session, so they're going to be smaller than our traffic school. They have much more participation. So while they're not clinical interventions, they do encourage participation and just some reflection and thought process. So it's not just a place where you're going to sit and listen, but there's going to be homework and there's going to be some sort of intervention. All of our programming and interventions, they're all live. So we don't really have online modules other than traffic school. We don't have online modules for anything. We do everything live. So if we do it virtually, it'll be like this through Zoom and through a mechanism where we can see each other and talk to each other, mimicking as if we were in a group session in person.
Do you ever come across the client or patient in your capacity, or participant, I guess? Do you ever come across the people who are just flat out instructed by their lawyers, don't talk, don't say anything?
Sure.
And how do you deal with that?
I mean, there's a lot of ways we deal with that, and it really, a lot of it depends on the situation. We get that a lot in our DUI school evaluations, where we'll get an individual that just doesn't answer the questions or wants the lawyer present at the time of the evaluation. So, and the state does not allow that to happen, and we have to follow state rules and guidelines on how we, do our DUI school. So in most cases, it really falls on us to try and engage that individual, right? That's kind of the training and the skill of our staff, to discuss that a little bit, to bring that down, to express that we're not here to get information so that it can be used against them in court, but that we're here to get information to build a plan that's going to help them. And so that, they're here, they're taking the time, they're taking their money to pay us for a service. And the best way to get a good outcome and a good experience from that service is to work with us in the best way, in the way that they feel most comfortable. We won't force individuals to answer questions. We won't force individuals to participate. And in most cases for our interventions, other than some clinical interventions where you do have to demonstrate progress, but for our classes, as long as you're present, you're going to get credit. So you don't have to speak if you're not comfortable speaking.
So my concern always as an attorney is privilege, right? If I send somebody into a group session, there's no privilege. They're speaking to a group. If I send somebody in to speak to you one-on-one, especially if you're in your capacity as a clinical psychologist, there is a patient psychotherapist privilege. And that at least will give me some level of comfort as a lawyer to be able to say to my client, look, you can tell Dr. Smith whatever you want, because Dr. Smith can't be compelled to testify against you.
Sure.
But the question is, what happens if my client is sitting in a group and starts yammering about, yeah, I did this, yeah, I did that, and then somebody else from the group gets subpoenaed by the state?
So I suppose that could happen, but in our 50-year history, it hasn't.
Well, let's hope I didn't just jinx it.
And typically we don't give information about other participants. So we still try to really advocate, which is our namesake, for the privacy of everyone. I mean, the purpose of our program is to help. And so if what happens in our program is used in a way that's going to harm our clients, it's going to shape and really affect future clients. and how we're able to have an impact. So we'll always advocate for privacy. The information that we share with the court is information we have to share, and that's relevant.
I never really concern myself so much with the court, because my experience with most judges is the less they have to do, the better. They want the quick report in terms of compliant, yes, compliant, no. Appearing, yes, appearing, no. Violating, yes, violating, no. They don't really care about details unless they become important as a general rule. State attorneys, however, I trust far less. And, they have investigative subpoena authority, and they can compel people to testify. And so that becomes a concern on my end to a certain degree. But again, it also depends on what we're talking about, right? Because there's a difference between somebody who's voluntarily and amenably in a program, which means if you're there because you want to be there, you're necessarily waiving those privacy rights in order to be able to earn the benefit, which ultimately would be a dismissal. Whereas if you're court ordered to be there, you don't have a choice. And then you've got to be a little more concerned, or at least your lawyer should be a little more concerned about the potential, for complications and wrinkles. At least that's how I look at it.
Understood. We're going to see it different based on our scope of work. But for us, it's up to us to engage and to get the relevant information. So honestly, our interventions don't focus so much on what happened on incidents, but it focuses more on putting together solutions to help individuals as they navigate their future, right? Our objective in our interventions is to make sure we don't see our clients again, right? That this is a one-stop for them and they won't be back. And so kind of going back to the incident and what happened and what not, we don't investigate those things. We don't ask a lot of questions. We don't take sides when it comes to that, because it's not helpful in helping them move forward.
I understand. That makes a whole lot of sense. So let's talk about some other stuff apart from just court stuff. Let's talk about DMV a little bit. You guys do traffic school, and anybody who's ever gotten a ticket knows that whenever you get a ticket, unless it's got a mandatory court appearance associated with it, you have three choices. Choice number one, which is the worst choice, is you can just pay the ticket and be done with it. Choice number two, which is the best choice on the opposite end of the spectrum, is you can hire a lawyer, and hopefully for a very small investment, it goes away and you don't have to worry about it. And then option number three is, if you haven't done it within 12 months, or I think 3 times in your life, you can voluntarily elect to take a driver improvement course. You guys provide those courses, correct?
We do. We provide the course. All of it is online. Anybody can register both in English and in Spanish through our website. We provide the course that helps individuals get their get their license. So the date course is what it's commonly referred to. We provide the 4-hour, the 8-hour, and the 12-hour driver improvement courses. All of that is online. We don't provide any in-person traffic school services.
What about, just out of curiosity, do you do the boater safety courses as well?
We do not. We do not do the boater safety courses. And we do not do, there is something called the high-risk traffic school that's only done by Miami-Dade College.
I think that's the 24-hour class.
24 or 31, but it's through Miami-Dade College North Campus.
What is the special supervision services, the SSS program?
Sure. So every certified or licensed DUI school has to have an SSS component. That's really for individuals that have had multiple DUIs in their lifetime. They get either a 5-year, a 10-year, or a permanent revocation in their license. After a certain time, depending on your revocation, you're eligible to get a hardship permit. And you have to pass all sorts of things. You have to demonstrate abstinence from alcohol or drugs for a certain period of time, make sure that there are no new arrests during that time, pass a drug test at present time, etc. So you have to do an application at a licensed DUI school to get into the special supervision program. And it's again for individuals that have abstained from alcohol, that have demonstrated a commitment to not driving without a license and doing the appropriate thing based on the law. And then they'll go ahead and through a special supervision program, once they're admitted, the Department of Motor Vehicles will grant them a hardship permit. During the time that they have the hardship permit, they must remain under supervision. So if a person is under a 10-year revocation, assuming, they've served about 1 or 2 years of abstinence, et cetera, they could be in our program up to, 10 years, 9 years, 8 years. Individuals that have permanent revocations, once they get a hardship, will be lifelong clients until they no longer need their hardship.
And that's whether it's through you or anyone else. That's a function
any
of
licensed DUI.
Right. So in other words, like I'm just saying, if I were under that condition here in Miami and I decided to move to Jacksonville, it may be more convenient for me to work with a provider up there. But either way, I'm still under that SSS requirement because of DMV.
That's right. And typically that's happened where you have individuals that move. They might, start up in Polk County and end up in Miami-Dade County, et cetera. So there's ways for DUI schools to transfer cases when clients need that.
Which actually brings up another interesting point. So Miami is I hate to use the term transient town, but we have a lot of tourists. We have a lot of people who come and go. We have a lot of people who have vacation homes here. We're like the Airbnb capital of the country. People always, so we have a little, joking expression in the criminal defense arena: came on vacation, left on probation. Obviously you service people who don't live here.
Sure.
We get an awful lot of diversion program subjects who are people who were visiting and had an unfortunate situation that resulted in an arrest, and they wind up doing a diversion program, and they do it from, obviously they don't come here and do it in Miami, but they fulfill their terms and obligations from wherever they are, be it whether it's remote classes that are done through Advocate directly, or community service that they're doing in Albuquerque or Seattle or Boston or Chicago or wherever they may be, but still are being supervised through Advocate here. I'm assuming that you have a pretty healthy percentage of non-local, court-ordered and or diversionary clients.
Absolutely, yeah. We have individuals that might reside somewhere else in Florida, somewhere else in the United States, and we have also international clients as well that reside in Latin America or Europe. And so we work with those individuals. It really, all of it depends on the conditions that they have to do. In many cases, especially here in the U.S., if DUI school, for example, is something that they have to do, that has to be done in person. And so one of the things that will help is help them find a DUI school that's, legitimate, licensed in whatever area that they're residing in. And that's easy if it's in the United States, not so easy somewhere else.
Right. Florida will honor as long as it meets the threshold requirements that the Florida program has. And that's another kind of pro tip for the folks out there. We get a lot of this here in Florida, and I'll give you not really relevant to our discussion, but we get a lot of sex offenders that move to Florida from other states. And other states, many other states, I dare say most other states, have much lighter or lesser sex offense laws than Florida, which has very heavy and very hardy sex offender penalties, registrations, tags, scarlet letters, whatever you want to call them. A lot of other states have these types of deals where you get your sex offense, but as you work through your program and your probation and whatever, they drop the charges down to a non-sex offender charge that you ultimately close out. It's kind of like akin to what you were saying about Back on Track, right? Back on Track, you get arrested and booked for DUI. You cut a deal, you complete the program successfully, the state agrees to dismiss your DUI, and instead they plea you into the lesser offense of reckless driving, and they give you a withhold. They don't even convict you. So it's a similar situation to that in many other states in our country that do that with sex offenses. So somebody from Minnesota or North Dakota moves to Florida, and they don't realize that Florida doesn't give a crap what that other state labeled it at. Florida only cares, what do we consider that offense? And if Florida would consider that offense a sex offense, then even though you don't need to register in North Dakota, you need to register here in Florida. So I'm assuming that's the same type of analogy that you have, let's say with the DUI school, right? If I'm a resident of Nevada, and I get a DUI here in Florida, and I don't want to come here and take DUI school in person for 12 or 24 hours or however long it is, you're going to help me to find an accredited DUI school in my state that Florida DMV will give a check mark to and say, yes, that works for us.
That's right. That's right. And because you're absolutely right. There are a majority of services that we offer you could do remotely. DUI school statutorily, you must do in person. And so every DUI school in Florida is going to require that. So if, we do our classes in the weekends to help accommodate individuals that are traveling, they might come in for a weekend and they might get everything done in a week. And that sometimes is preferable to some individuals.
It just froze.
Oh, I could see you.
Can you hear me?
I
just
hear
froze
you.
Or you froze. Somebody froze.
Are we back?
Doctor?
I could hear you.
Are we still going here?
Neither of you are frozen. We're still going.
Okay. I think his audio might.
Doctor, I don't. There you go.
I think it's something happened to your audio.
I don't hear you. Rachel, are we still on? Am I still on?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, now I can hear you, but I can't hear my guest. I don't hear the doctor.
Can you hear me?
Is she still on?
I can hear her fine, and we are still on. Do you want me to end it?
I don't want to end it, but I can't. She's frozen on my screen. So if you can hear her, doctor, can you hear me?
I could hear him.
She can hear
him. I can hear him, but there is something
well,
off with his audio.
Her. So you know what? Maybe can I log out and relog back in?
Yes.
Okay, let me do that.
Apologies.
No worries. It isn't a party until a technical difficulty happens.
Back?
Can you hear me?
Now I got you. I'm sorry. Something happened on my end. I don't know where we got cut off. I think the last
we were talking about, I think, the DUI
out
school.
Of state. Right.
Yeah, and how it's statutory that it's in person. And so we have classes for the DUI school in the weekend. And we could facilitate an individual doing everything within 1 or 2 weeks, as long as they register early and get us, they could set appointments to come in. And sometimes that will, depending on where they live. Sometimes it's not, and we'll help them find a location wherever they reside in the United States.
Let's talk about some of the things that the advocate program is involved in that don't necessarily involve court stuff. And these are the things that I really think I'm very proud to be able to talk about with you, because these are the things that really make you, in my opinion, stand out differently than other government contractors that are, just doing it, going through the mechanisms and the mechanics and not really, thinking outside of the box and trying to do more. And that's, I think, really what makes advocates special, is you are doing so much more. So let's spend a couple minutes talking about Victim Response Inc., Bridging Families and Communities, Veteran Services, Advocate Center for Treatment and Training, and the Advocate Housing Solutions programs. If we could just maybe hit a minute or two on each of those so that the folks understand, what are these programs that you're doing? Why are you doing them? And how can it affect them? And perhaps volunteers, who are looking to spend some time doing some good for people might fit into these categories even better than any of the court stuff. Sure.
So I'll start. Victims Response Inc. is historical, and I'll tell you just a little bit about that. It doesn't exist anymore because the shelter system here is primarily run by the county, and that's the domestic violence shelters are run by the county. but the scope that Advocate has had with respect to victims of domestic violence. And this really is, as you mentioned, a testament to how we approach the work we do, which is unique, right? Because in most cases, private nonprofits are typically not nationwide in the space of misdemeanor diversion and probation. Our approach to service is that of figuring out how we could really help and change the lives of the people that come through our doors. And because of that, we really identified that while we're working with perpetrators of domestic violence, you still have the other half of the family that you have to serve. And so in many respects, we become a community partner, and we develop things. We started, along with several other stakeholders, the Domestic Violence Sexual Assault Council of Greater Miami. So individuals that are out in the community that want to work at a community level in domestic violence. There are a lot of boards and associations and groups and task forces that work together on these topics. And the other thing is, based on that, we identified a need for family services. And that's how one of our programs, Bridging Families and Communities, was devised and implemented. And Bridging Families and Communities is a program that works primarily with domestic violence and family court. And what it does is individuals that need services go and get referred to Bridging, or BFC is what we call it, and they get wraparound services, and it's all child focused. It's funded by the Children's Trust primarily. We have child and family therapists. We have success coaches that go out. We go to the home so they don't have to come to our locations. We assess the child because a lot of times you have families that are in conflict, and they might not see things like developmental delays or health issues that their children are going through. And so we help kind of address the children in the home for safety, physical issues. And then we also help the family identify and deal with the chaos and the conflict that might be going on, and really help them focus on creating healthy relationships, parenting plans that will reduce the conflict and improve the outcomes of the children and everybody in their home. So it's a great program, very successful program. That I'm very proud to work with and have really developed alongside some of coworkers that still are there today. We also have a very extensive program that's funded by the United States Veterans Administration called SSVF, or Supportive Services for Veteran Families. And that program I mentioned is Broward, Miami-Dade, and Monroe. And what we do there is we work with the local VA, we work with community providers, anybody that sees veterans. And this is, kind of a PSA for anybody out there that knows a veteran family that has an issue with homelessness or might become homeless. So we do both preventative services, we do services to help individuals that have arrears in their rent so that they don't get evicted. And then we have services for people that veterans that might be without a home and need to find placement. Those services are available in the Tri-County area. And we have, because, there's a VA process and a VA funding, we do have certain eligibility that we have to follow, but we have outreach staff. We are, we go out in the street, we'll go to the shelters, we'll go anywhere to work with veterans and to place them and to try and help them. Advocate Housing Solutions is kind of an offset of our SSVF program, but it's for those individuals that might not be veterans or might be veterans but aren't eligible for whatever reason for the federal funds and federal help. And so we have some county funds, et cetera, through the Homeless Trust that help us provide some services at a much lesser level, to be fair, but to those individuals experiencing homelessness in our community.
Do you do other services for veterans, or is it just with regards to housing?
It's mostly in respect to housing or preventing homelessness, but we are connected here to the Veterans Coalition, to other veterans providers. So if you have veterans that are in need, even if housing is not the issue, they could still contact us and we'll try and plug them into the right services. They could also obviously call 211, which is a great resource. But we'll help as well, even if homelessness might not be the main issue that they're experiencing.
Do you do any work in conjunction with Miami-Dade County Veterans Court? The Veterans Diversion Court?
We receive services. We receive referrals, I would say, for those individuals that are eligible for our services, but we don't work directly with the court.
because we do have that diversionary program through the 11th Judicial Circuit. What do you have any future plans? Is there anything in the works that you guys can share without divulging any trade secrets?
Sure.
About
So another service that we offer, and this is, we talked about this earlier in terms of voluntary services. So we have clinical services. We're a licensed and accredited outpatient substance abuse provider and mental health provider. And you don't have to come from a system, but we do work primarily with justice impacted individuals. We're a network provider for our managing entity here in Miami-Dade County. So the state funds for mental health and substance abuse all get awarded to managing entities in the circuit, and then they fund it to local providers. And so we receive funding as well to provide services to individuals that can't afford it, that need access to care. One of the real neat things that we're doing now, we're working with a federally qualified health clinic. And one of the things we're trying to do is get a mobile health center at our locations. A lot of times many of our clients that are coming from court, they haven't had a physical in years. And this is part of what we're talking about in terms of making sure that we identify and address the well-being factors and the issues that are affecting our clients. And many of them just don't have access to medical services. So in an effort to help connect individuals to health professionals, primary health, we're bringing a mobile health clinic just to do outreach and increase health access for our population. And then one of the real neat things that we're involved in is Judge Leifman, who's real big on mental health, is a huge mental health advocate here in our community. He has developed, along with the county and all sorts of other leaders, the mayor, et cetera, the Miami Center for Mental Health and Recovery. And we're really happy to be a partner there and to help put that program together. So we're everywhere, and we're really trying very hard to make an impact on Miami-Dade and other communities, so that individuals that are often not served or don't have access to care will get access to that they need.
Well, Dr. Perez-Morina, you have just really spent an hour opening up a lot of minds, certainly mine. I learned a couple of things I didn't know going into this. I started by talking earlier about how you had helped me with a client not too long ago. I had a client who was in a domestic situation. I did not want to put him in diversion. I did not want the state to know that he was in treatment or therapy, but I wanted him to get the benefit of certain anger management sessions so that I could use that strategically as a tool in an effort to try and flank the state. I had a defense. I had, an affirmative defense. We had motion work. We had all sorts of stuff we were doing on the legal front. But I had the client doing this proactively on his own, which served two purposes. One, it gave me that flank when time would come for me to be able to open up dialogue with the state and say, before I launch this, I want you to think about that, and let's see if we can reach an accord. But more importantly, for my purposes too, because I always have to multitask as a lawyer. I'm not just your lawyer. I'm your advisor. I'm your advocate. I'm your negotiator. I serve, as does every lawyer, pursuant to the rules of professional responsibility. We have to fill many different roles at the same time. But one of those roles is knowing that my clients, sometimes like my son, need to be distracted. And so I've given them something to do, a task. And not only does it keep them busy, but they actually get something out of it if they amenably participate. And then they feel so much better about themselves, not to mention are equipped with better coping skills in certain circumstances, like that particular anger management one. Because I had a guy who was a hothead. I mean, this is the type of person who you warn your kids or your spouse or yourself about when you get behind the wheel of the car and say, don't cut this guy off, right? Because he's the powder keg. So you were very helpful in terms of steering me to be able to get this individual into a setting where he could get that help. And I would also be equipped as his advocate to be able to do the best job that I could do. And so I've thanked you for that before. I want to thank you for it again. But that's a little pro tip for other lawyers out there, that if you didn't think about it, you might. There are tools and services through the advocate program and other agencies and entities and private providers as well, but certainly through advocate that are available to lawyers and to clients, whether it's professionally or personally or even just individually. The hardest part of any journey is taking the first step, right? And so this is where it falls on the individual sometimes to be able to recognize and have the ability to look themselves in the mirror and say, I need help and I want help. And I thank you for being there for them and for me and for all of us. I wish you guys all the best, and I'm very grateful for your spending an hour with us today. I know that the audience got an awful lot out of it. I know I did, and I'm very appreciative. Thank you so very, very much.
Thank you. No, thank you for having me. And any questions that the audience might have, they could reach us through our Facebook page. They could reach me by email. My email is ipmorina@advocateprogram.org. And I'm happy to help individuals that, anybody that has questions and individuals that might want to find out how to become more involved in our agency.
Thank you so very much for your time. Thank you so much for everything that you do. We appreciate you. We're very grateful. Just a quick programming note. There will not be a show next week. I think I mentioned earlier, today is National Sons Day. My son, who moved out of state when he graduated high school, is coming to visit he's coming this weekend. And so I am not going to have a show on Monday because I'm taking the day off to hang with my kid. So it'll be a belated National Sons Day for me. Anyhow, thank you again, Doctor. Have a great day. Audience, we'll see you a week from Monday, hopefully on the 18th of this month. Thanks again, everybody. Thank you to Miami's community newspapers for our producers for producing the show. As soon as the show is done, they will upload it to all of the various social media platforms, and I will, of course, publish them, and they will be sent over to the good doctor for her use and publication should she so choose. Thank you, everybody, again. Have a great day. We appreciate you all. Thank you for letting us be at your service, and we look forward to seeing you in 2 weeks with episode number 80.